Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center. This is a podcast that you do not want to miss as it relates to building what I refer to as the premier accounting firm, offering quality accounting services and helping you get paid what you're worth by actually working on your business. It's here that we actually focus on the various things that you can be doing, such as marketing, selling, pricing your services, offering quality services, onboarding clients, retaining them, training your staff, working on tech stacks, your mental health, and so many other things. What we do here is we invite the experts, and each week dive into the things that you can be doing to work on your business. This is going to be a great episode because I've been looking forward to this conversation as it relates to culture. I happen to have a guest on that I've been excited to speak with. It's Jesper Maquindang. He happens to be someone with over 12 years of experience leading diverse teams. Jesper understands the rewarding impact of creating workplace cultures that embrace collaboration and innovation. His passion of creating and brainstorming and continuous improvement drives him to actually experiment with new ideas and explore better ways of doing things. Jesper actually graduated from the University of Southern California, where he completed his executive master's degree in leadership. In addition to that, Jesper is an award recipient of the Santa Clara Valley's 40 Under 40 Award, acknowledging his significant leadership contributions to the community. So Jesper, welcome to the show.
Roger, good morning from Los Angeles. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited to join you.
Yeah, this is going to be a great conversation. You know, one of the things that really is interesting is, as a leader of an organization, which I am, and the clients that I work with, we're always struggling with culture. And so this is something that I'm looking to dive a little bit deeper into, not only for myself, but also for my clients and clearly my listeners. So let's talk first about culture as to what it means to you. How do you define culture with your clients?
Absolutely. So for culture, it all starts with the leadership. And what I want to do is, before I explain culture, I'll explain what it means to be an effective leader, because that's where it starts. And then I'll use that to segue into an effective culture. So for a leader, there's actually 4 super skills that make an effective leader. And the 4 super skills are public speaking, public listening, private speaking, and private listening.
Interesting.
So for public speaking, it's a common skill that people are aware of. And the importance of it is that every leader has a message to share. And I know there are some introverts out there that say, oh, public speaking, that's not something I want to do. I'm not a fan of that. Why do I have to public speak? Well, for those out there that aren't excited about public speaking, you don't have to like it. You don't have to love it. You can despise it. But as a leader, you have a message. At some point, you need to share that because other people are looking up to you to show the way forward. So public speaking is the first skill. And next is public listening. And with public listening, it's where a leader has the courage and humility to step aside and give other people the stage. And it's not necessarily a stage in the literal sense. It can be in the office, the boardroom, cubicle. It's just giving your employees the opportunity to speak up and share their voice, share the ideas they have. Next, we have private speaking. And I know there are people out there, wait, does that mean introverts get to celebrate and talk to themselves? No. Private speaking is a term I use for coaching and mentoring. And I call it private speaking because those conversations are private. I've seen so many leaders where they have one-on-ones and they go to other people saying, oh, hey, Jesper did this, Jesper did that. No. One-on-one conversations are precious and have to be kept within the 2 people. But with coaching and mentoring, it's the opportunity where the leader has that time where they can talk to their employees and listen to what's going on, what's new, how can they help. That's the opportunity for private speaking. And lastly, private listening. And I know there are people out there thinking, wait, private listening, is that where you go out into the mountains and just sit in the summit and reflect? Close, actually. So what private listening is, it's for a leader to take the time to reflect on their own development. And some people do that with meditation, but mostly my recommendation is taking leadership assessments where people can take the time and effort to really understand what they're doing well and areas where they can improve. And these are the 4 areas of an effective leader: public speaking, public listening, private speaking, and private listening. So there are public and private versions of speaking and listening. And with that said, once a leader implements those, they're set to build an effective culture. And in setting an effective culture, there's something I've developed called the core for mentor.
Well,
And
before hold on. Before we get into those, I want to talk about this leadership principle that
yes,
you're addressing, and then we can build into the culture as you mentioned.
yes,
So, as it relates to these four things, I want to kind of dive into one of them in particular, but let's just recap them. So, obviously, it's the public speaking. Clearly, like you mentioned, some people are just not very comfortable with that, but it's essential. It's the messaging that we're doing. People need to
correct,
be inspired by what we're saying, and it's a challenge for many individuals as leaders to actually be that inspirational person, the one that speaks with clarity and purpose, the one that can actually be very specific and deliberate in what they're trying to communicate. That's very powerful. But the public listening, I like that. It's reading the room. It's something that I've been encouraged to do a better job of, because sometimes I'm not as attentive as I should be. But yet, reading the market, reading your customers, reading your employees in those public settings, that's very important. And I think it's good to maybe pause and listen a little bit more, as you were alluding. And then the private speaking, you're so right. There are conversations that need to be held in private. There are things that we need to be doing within the company, with individuals, whether it's family, whether it's professionally. There are things that need to be held in confidence, and that's one of the things that I think some people struggle with, because gossip can creep in, and you want to. I know something others don't. I want to share that. You have to remember that this was shared in a safe environment typically, and people confided, and you've got to be a respecter of that. And then the idea of private listening, just basically listening to what's going on. What are those inspirations, those little insights that you're receiving as it relates to the marketplace, as it relates to individuals, as it relates to situations, and also being self-aware. And so I liked how you were talking about each of those. And clearly they're going to evolve into the culture you're going to create within your organization, because if you're doing those well, they're going to manifest themselves in the culture that you're managing, correct?
correct. Roger, you're right on point.
Yeah. So, okay, let's go now into the culture. And I was going to ask a question about the private listening. By the way,
Absolutely.
the thing I was going to mention or ask is, I've always heard the phrase that you praise in public and you reprimand in private. Would that fall into that private speak that you were referring to?
That would actually, yes, for that would go under private speaking and private listening. Because as you mentioned, when it comes to praise, you really want to give the credit to your employees. That'll motivate them. And when it comes to reprimanding your employee, that's not something you want to really just throw out there, because that's going to demotivate them. But if you're holding that privately, you're giving an opportunity for them to work on that without making it a big deal to the entire organization. That's just going to scare them and make them run away. But if you're keeping that as a private conversation, uh, your employees are more likely to trust you and work with you and develop what they need to work on. So great point, Roger.
Very good. Okay, so let's now go into the culture. You've got the leadership identified, those things that are key elements to be a successful leader. Let's go into the culture and how that manifests there.
Absolutely. After there's buy-in from leadership and effectiveness on that end, it's time to move it to the culture. And there's something I developed as a mindset called the core for mentor. The core for mentor. And before I break down what those qualities are, I'll break down what I mean by the phrase. So, core, this is the basic requirements of what's needed. If an organization can't get this down, they're off to a rough start. And there are four qualities for this. And mentor, when it comes to leadership and culture, it's this sense of mentorship where everyone should be supporting the growth and development of each other. The core for mentor.
All right. So
And
the core four. So you got the core. This is obviously the foundation, the essence of it all. What are the four things that you're alluding to?
yes, so the four qualities are, it actually spells the word life, Life.
Okay.
And the first one is listening, specifically active listening. People in the organization need to put in that effort to really understand what other people are going through when they share their thoughts, and really sharing that sense of understanding, giving other people that opportunity that they're listening. As we've heard with that phrase, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And the reason for that is we should be listening more. Next one, I, is innovation. As a culture, everyone should be promoting and embracing the idea of just sharing new concepts, new ideas, new perspectives. Because if people are resistant to share new ideas, there's not much change. And Roger, do you know what the 6 most dangerous words are in any company culture?
Somebody else will do it. I don't know.
Close. We've always done it that way.
Okay.
We've always done it that way. The 6 most dangerous words in any company culture. When an organization is stuck with the status quo, it's not going to get very far. On the other hand, if an organization is embracing that change and innovation, they're setting themselves up to building a stronger company culture. Next, in life, we have futuristic. And what I mean by futuristic, it's not necessarily adopting the latest and greatest technology, although that can help. But with futuristic, it's about the mission, the values, and the purpose of the organization. If an organization does not have something they stand for, employees are just going to go into the office and just do things for the paycheck. On the other hand, if an organization does have that greater purpose within them, you're going to see that excitement with the employees, especially when it comes to accounting. When you have that mission of getting the numbers together, staying organized, making sure your clients are just really have a better understanding of how the numbers plan their life, that's really going to add that sense of mission and purpose between clients, the customers, and the organization. So purpose plays a big role, especially in the world of accounting, where numbers, no, as the saying goes, numbers don't lie. And in this world, it really does help to have that sense of purpose. And along with being that visionary, it's also the idea of setting goals toward the future and understanding that what's past is past. Roger, imagine if a leader came up to you and said, Roger, 15 years ago, we were so successful. We need to implement what we did 15 years ago. We need to upgrade ourselves with Palm Pilots. It worked back then, so it's just got to work now. And you're probably thinking, Jesper, Palm Pilots, do you want me to go back to the storage room and get out my fax machine and send out those invoices with my fax machine? Is that how this works? So obviously, it's not a very futuristic idea of setting your goals, because what worked back then, it's not going to work for the future. And then lastly, for E in life, it's encouraging. It's important for employees, leaders, staff members to really support each other, to go up to you and say, Roger, I believe in you. You can do this. Because imagine if someone came up to you and said, Jesper, you're just not ready. I mean, when someone says that, how do you think I'll feel? I'll get demotivated. I'll just get turned off and not excited for the next project. But if someone came up to me and said, Jesper, this next project, it might be a little bit outside your comfort zone, but we're committed to giving you the resources that you need to succeed over time. What do you think about that? What do I think about that? That is exciting.
Well, I'm liking what I'm hearing because, first of all, I like acronyms. It's a great way of remembering things. So, kind of going back through these, you've got 4 key things. You've got L for listen. I'm always an advocate of listening. It's something we should be doing more. And your illustration of we've got 1 mouth, 2 ears, let's use them accordingly. That's always an apropos thing to say. The other thing of innovation with I, very important, because I do feel that things are evolving and changing, and you have to innovate. And you've got to create within your organization that intent of how can we do this differently or better. And then with regards to F being futuristic, I do appreciate the fact that the leader needs to have vision. Where are we going? What's the purpose of all this? What are we trying to accomplish? That's where you can inspire your people, because they feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves and they're making a difference. And then as for E being encouraging, that's wonderful, because I like the positive connotation that comes from that. You need to create a culture that's built around positive influence, people recognizing, encouraging, and motivating one another. So I like all of that. And then obviously you're looking at this as being a core of the culture. So I'm curious, what's the mentoring part of it?
Sure. The mentoring is the overall framework where the belief that an effective culture is one in which everyone in the organization is supporting the growth and development of each other. It's not where one person is in it for themselves. This is a team effort where everyone should be looking out for each other as a mentor would.
Very good. Now, I know you have an assessment, a way of assessing how things are actually in this space. Tell us a little bit about the assessment that you've created.
Yes. So I've actually uh, administered an assessment called the Behavioral Elements Assessment. It was actually developed by a TEDx speaker named Jay Johnson,
Okay.
and he's part of the Behavioral Elements team. What that does with the behavioral elements, it gives you an overview of what drives your behavior based on the decisions you're making day to day. And that's based on the four elements, which are fire, air, earth, and water. And for the fire element, these are the leaders and managers who are motivated and driven by this sense of competition and competition in a good sense. So, for example, let's say you gave a sales manager the goal of making 100 calls. This sales manager, if they have the fire, they will go back to you and say, Roger, really? 100? I can do 150. Actually, let's make that 200. They're just driven by this drive. Next up is the earth element. These are the leaders and managers who really appreciate structure and organization because when everything is in place, they really appreciate that everything will run smoothly. Next up is air, and these are the leaders and managers who are driven by innovation and creativity. They really love brainstorming sessions. As the metaphor goes, these are the people who throw something at the wall and see what sticks. And then lastly, it's the water, and these are the leaders and managers who are excited by the drive to bond, which means they appreciate the leaderships, uh, the relationships and connections they make in the workplace. So these are the four elements: fire, earth, air, and water.
Interesting. I've never heard them described that way. So when somebody takes the assessment, this is obviously a personal leadership assessment, and I'm assuming it will rank where they have their strengths and where they have areas of improvement. Is that correct?
Correct. Well, not necessarily strengths and weaknesses, but this is everyone has all four elements in one area of another. And if it's low in one area, it's not necessarily a weakness. It's more of a preference. However, at the same time, it still gives an opportunity to work on that.
Very good. So when you're talking about culture, let's go back to the beginning. One of the things that I think is very important is for years, we've had cultures where we coexisted. We were in the same office space. We were actually interacting with one another. I dare say that you saw the coworker more than you did, say, family or friends. Therefore, these were intimate individuals with whom you were actually associated and working towards a common goal. Today, so many of the offices that I'm familiar with, my own included, happens to be with remote people. And one of the biggest challenges that I'm seeing people face, myself included, is that of actually building a culture with individuals that you don't interact with, you don't pass in the hallway, you don't have side conversations with. It's typically a meeting where it's a get in, have a conversation, address a particular topic, or get done, or it's kind of a Zoom meeting where everybody's really, you're able to multitask and just be present theoretically and not really participate. And it's very non-connected is what I would say. How do you address some of these frustrations that individuals have that I'm expressing here as it relates to building a culture when you're just not interacting with these people?
That's an excellent question. And we've seen more of it especially with the pandemic where it's intensified this transition toward remote and hybrid work. What I would recommend is that leaders and managers need to be more intentional about connecting with their employees. Gone are the days, well, I mean, not necessarily gone, but it's not as common as pre-pandemic when we could step away from our desk and go to a coworker's cubicle and say, Roger, how's your day been? How's the family? Just checking to see how you're doing. It's in this hybrid and remote world, it's not the same. With today's landscape, I would recommend that leaders put in the time and effort to actually schedule calls with their employees, not just to check in for the sake of checking in and seeing how progress is going with their work, but checking in to see what's new with life in general. How's their day going? Really that personal touch. Because if it's just talking about work, all day, every day, especially in the remote and hybrid work, it's going to burn out employees. But when you're checking in intentionally to say, Roger, really checking in to see how you're doing. Want to know, I don't see you as much as I used to do in the office, but how are things going? That really opens up a more uh, personal conversation between the leader and the employee.
I like that. I like that a lot. That actually might help me. So I appreciate that. So, with regards to culture, have you seen things that have come out positively from the remote work, hybrid type work environments as it relates to culture? What are some of the positives that people are not recognizing, but yet now are manifesting?
Absolutely. So, with remote work and hybrid work, I know we've seen stresses that have developed over time, but at the same time, yes, there still are positives. And one of the positives with employees is a different sense of work life balance. Before the pandemic, when people were going to work in person, people are still going to work in person today for those organizations that provide it. But the commute, it's different now where employees, especially in the Los Angeles area, they would take an hour just to drive each way. But nowadays, for those working remotely, they have the opportunity to better plan their day and using that newfound time to really schedule what they want to do, especially when it comes to work. So it's given them that time. Another is just that general balance where since they're at home, they're not getting as many distractions as they do in the workplace. In the event that maybe something in the office, there might be other employees that want to check in and just have random conversations. But there are employees that maybe want their privacy, and working at home might provide that opportunity. So there are positives that have still come out of this world of remote and hybrid work.
Very good. So, being a leader with a remote or hybrid team, do you have any advice as to things that can be done to, one, develop a good culture, but more importantly, affect productivity in a positive way?
Absolutely. The first thing I'd like to recommend is having regular team meetings. I wouldn't wait for an occasional opportunity, but actually have team meetings where you're checking in with everyone on a regular basis to see how everyone's doing. And during these meetings, also have icebreakers where you're checking in to see opportunities to open up about personal things and learn more about each other. Because since the days of being in person have been less common in the remote and hybrid world, where people can have just easy flowing conversations about who they are as a person. In the remote world, you want to use some time during meetings just to learn more about each other. And then the second thing I recommend is having more one on ones where you're really getting the opportunity to connect with your employee, that personal connection that you're providing to your staff members. These are the things that you can provide as a leader in building a effective company culture. And then another thing I recommend is having feedback sessions intentionally, where you're actually meeting with your employees and gathering ideas. Because since everyone's not in the office at the same time, might not be as easy to generate these new ideas. But if you make that intentional and set aside specific time, you can gather more perspectives and insights. So these are the types of things I recommend in developing an effective culture in a remote and hybrid workplace.
I appreciate those suggestions because ideas like that are what I need to hear to basically consider, am I doing everything I can to not only connect with my employees, but motivate and encourage them? I do struggle, especially with so many that are remote and working not only across the United States, but elsewhere. I just wonder what more can I do to engage and connect with them? As my organization's grown, I've kind of been accepting of the fact that I don't know all of my employees. At some point, there is this tipping point of whether you get to tens, hundreds, or thousands, tens of thousands of employees. You have to understand that it's very plausible that you're just not going to know everyone. But at the same time, what more can I do to engage with more of them and at least be not such a distant leader? And that'd be a very important thing. All right, so let's talk about you with regards to your experiences working with organization leaders, helping them actually learn and apply these principles in their lives, in their organizations. What are some of the things that you've seen people struggle with the most as they're learning and implementing the things that you're teaching?
Yes. So it's the general idea of it starts with the general idea of leadership. People think leadership is standing on top of your title and barking orders. Leadership is more than that. We're moving to a new world where leadership is more about listening. It's putting your ego aside and giving up people the opportunity to own the decisions they're making. So it's really understanding a new definition of what leadership is, because gone are the days where people can command and control. We're moving on to a world where leadership means much more than that. It means really being empathetic and being supportive and really serving others instead of expecting others to serve you in at the workplace.
Interesting. Very, very good. So as people hear what you're sharing, when they, think it's obvious, it's clearly something I can go ahead and implement. They sometimes, I'm sure, struggle implementing or changing. What advice do you have as to how to change or embrace these types of philosophies and implementing them in the business?
Absolutely. Change. That reminds me of the lessons I've learned in my first job. Now, when I started my first job right out of college, it was at a travel company. And what I realized was before I was hired into the organization, the other employees on the team had actually put their 2 week notice in. So they had their some personal matters to resolve. So there were
Hmm.
things on their end. But once I landed into the office, I realized all that institutional knowledge gone. If you think about it, all the years that they put, they're since they're moving on, that knowledge won't stay on. But what I did was really learned as much as I could, as quickly as I could. And then when we had the opportunity to develop a new team, I had that opportunity to start from scratch and find new processes. And with the first lesson, what I realized was when I had my new team with me, I felt that as a leader, I was the one who had uh, that opportunity to really oversee another team. So as a leader, I thought, you know what? Since I'm the leader and I have ideas, I'm going to tell them how that's going to look, and we're going to move forward that way. But I realize when you're just telling people what to do, they're not going to be as motivated. I realize that if you give people the power to make decisions for the organization, they'll feel they will feel this sense of ownership and more empowered to move forward with the ideas that everyone has collectively put together. And the second lesson I learned was with our organization, any job can be tedious, and there are absolutely tedious tasks that need to be done. But when I was a member of our local chamber of commerce, they told us how to build a mission statement. And working for a travel company with the guidance of the program that they developed, I had developed a mission statement under the idea of we help our clients achieve their dreams when they travel. And then when I introduced it to my team, that just gave them a better sense of purpose, and I could see the motivation coming through because they were more engaged and excited to really put the work in because now they knew what to stand for. And the third lesson I learned at my first job is conflict resolution, in the sense that there was a time when there were two team members that just had differences of opinions, and I thought to myself, I'm just going to sit back. These are adults. They shouldn't. They need to just grow up and figure out what to do. But I realized that's not how it works from a leadership perspective. When it comes to conflict resolution, the leader should step in and find ways to alleviate the problem. So what I did was I took the time to have one-on-ones with each employee and understand their perspectives. And then once that was completed, I got those two employees to really have a conversation about what happened, what's going on in their mind, and how they can move forward. And with those types of conversations, that really gave a better understanding and just added more empathy of what each person was going through. So I would recommend for a leader, when it comes to conflict resolution, even if your staff members are adults, it's still our responsibility to step in and find ways to alleviate any issues at hand.
Very interesting. One of the things that I really relate to there is the idea of change does require change. And what I mean by that is I learned this phrase years and years ago. You either change the people or you change the people. And it's just basically recognizing that through skills and mediation, like you're describing, there are ways to adapt or address certain situations. But at the end of the day, if it's just not working, it may mean that individual may need to move on. And there are hard decisions that have to be made, but listening and mediating, those types of things are sometimes characteristics that leaders aren't known for and perhaps may not recognize as being so essential in the culture, but clearly they're needed as you're working with individuals. It's just what we as people have to deal with on occasion. So I appreciate you bringing that up. So on a personal note, just real quickly, you've had the opportunity to work with many individuals, various situations, organizations. What's something that you've learned from these interactions? What is something that's caught your attention as you've worked with people and basically seen humans at their best and at their worst?
So on the best side, fortunately, I've had the opportunity to work with leaders who understand the value of personal and professional growth. These leaders, I've provided 360-degree assessments, and when they see their feedback, they don't see it as a end all be all. They realize that even with the negative feedback they receive, they're willing to grow, they're willing to change, they're willing to move forward and take that feedback. So, for example, there was an executive I was working with. He was with a nonprofit, and one of the assessment responses he received in his 360-degree assessment was that although he was not in a client-facing role, this executive felt that he could dress as casually as he wanted to. But based on the feedback, another executive had mentioned, although you're not dealing with clients directly, you're still in a professional role and you're still expected to play that part as a professional. So he took that as feedback for growth instead of an end all be all. And what that executive did was he dressed up more formally because he realized, even if he's not interacting with people on the outside, he's still a professional, and he's playing that part as he interacts internally with his staff members. So I really appreciate leaders who really are accepting of their feedback. The second thing, at their worst, there are leaders who won't take that feedback as beneficially as you would expect them to be. Sometimes there are leaders who see feedback and it's, for one, they think other people are wrong, or two, they think that those tough characteristics are what make them great. In those situations, you want to remind those leaders that they're still interacting with others. It's still important to work as a team, because if you're taking everything on your own and you're being led by ego, it's going to burn everyone out. And then when no one's by your side, you're going to feel that pressure and you're going to burn out yourself.
Very interesting. I like feedback, not because it's always nice to get. It's sometimes harsh, but at the same time, it's insights and perspectives that sometimes we're just oblivious to. And these people are having the opportunity to share some information. Some are very good at communicating that information in a way that's constructive. Others are a little bit more curt and abrasive, but nonetheless, it's feedback. And if we can listen, perhaps it's an opportunity for us to grow. And so I like that. That was very important to share. So Jesper, one other question. What are you grateful for?
Grateful for just the opportunities to learn and grow. As you can see, the books behind me, it's really just given me as I look at my books, just new insights, perspectives about how to live and really move forward with how to be more effective in personal and professional growth.
I like it.
I'm grateful for that.
Well, Jesper, I'm very grateful that you've been on the show today because I like the conversation. It's a very important conversation, one that I was excited to have, because culture, I think, is a very important part of not only my business's success, but the conversations I'm having with my own clients and the individuals that are listening to this, I'm sure are finding the application of this within their own organization. So very, very grateful for it. Here's what I'd like to do is I'd like to just break for a moment and come back to you for a closing thought, but I'd like to make an offer for our listeners. Basically, Jesper's provided something here that you want to take advantage of. It is access to his behavioral elements certified guide. He's actually inviting us to go and take advantage of a free opportunity to take this assessment and learn from it. So I encourage you to do so. You can go to the episode description and get the information you need there for this free assessment. And from a leadership perspective, see what you can learn about how you can be better and more effective in your skills. The other that I'd like to invite you to is actually in the episode description is learning about what's called the STAR program. It is basically a cultural based program to help you influence and implement a culture of accountability. It's basically setting up key expectations of your employees, letting them know what is expected and essential from them as it relates to achieving the company-wide goal and what their role is in that. So definitely encourage you to check out the STAR program. Now, in with that, I'd like to just kind of summarize a few of the highlights that I have. One is obviously this idea of leadership before culture, just recognizing those four things that are important for us to realize as leaders: that public speaking, public listening, private speaking, private listening are a key essential part of who we are as leaders. We need to be more conscious of that as we're in the various roles that we're in, the conversations that we're having, because these all will bleed into the culture that we're having. And then he had the acronym of LIFE, that idea of listening, innovating, being futuristic, and at the same time acknowledging and basically encouraging that reward and encouragement that we can give in the organization, I think is very important. So that was very helpful. It's just recognizing that the culture is a dynamic thing that we get to influence as leaders and determine what it molds and shapes itself into. It's going to grow organically. It's going to happen anyways, but that's where we need to step in and make sure that it's having the influences that we would like to have. As it relates to growing the business, we talked about how to deal with remote and hybrid workers, some of the things that we can be doing in our leadership roles that are proactive to actually get to know and interact with our employees and know them a little bit better. I appreciated that insight. I took some actionable things from that. And then lastly, this whole idea of what we can do as leaders when it comes to change, just recognizing that it is something that we're going to be involved in. It's something that we should perhaps be making happen ourselves, but how do we facilitate that? That was, I think, a very important part of the conversation. So Jesper, very much appreciated what we've discussed today. What would you like to end with?
Absolutely. There's a quote that's really been resonating with me, and it's from John Maxwell. And John Maxwell says, helping others grow and develop brings great joy, satisfaction, and energy. And I'll share that again. Helping others brings great joy, satisfaction, and energy. That's from John Maxwell. And when you really serve others and help them become better people, life will reward you. So go out there and help others.
Beautiful. Jesper, thank you so much. So everyone, I'm grateful for this opportunity to have had you listen in. So subscribe if you haven't already. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, subscribe and set your notifications so you can get notified each and every week when we release new episodes of The Experts, speaking of things that we need to consider as we're working to build the premier accounting firms in our area. Also, I want to invite you to GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual conference that you do not want to miss. It's a conference that we put on each and every May, where we have the experts come, speak to us from the stage, share with us the insights that we need to be considering as we're building our business, and at the same time interact with our peers. It's here that we actually get to see those individuals that are doing as we're doing, see what they're doing right, make friendships, and collaborate with them as it relates to the clients that we're servicing. Basically finding ways that we can in fact grow our organizations and build what we are actually doing on a day-to-day basis. The other is that you get to actually meet the staff, the team here at Universal Accounting, those individuals that are committed to your success, helping you be in business for yourself, but not by yourself with Universal Accounting. So lots of reasons to come and join us. Definitely get your tickets now. If you haven't already, go to universalaccounting.com, and in the navigation, you'll see GrowCon. It's there that you can actually then register and get your tickets to join us each and every May for this wonderful event. The other thing that I'd like to point out is, as it relates to the topics we've discussed here today, or others that you've heard us discuss in the past, if you'd like to find out more what you can be doing to work on your business, feel free to reach out to us. You can contact Universal Accounting by going to universalaccountingschool.com or calling us at 801-265-3777. And always remember this: if it's about accounting, it is Universal. Take care. Have a great day and be safe out there. Jesper, that was wonderful.
Thank you, Roger. That was an excellent summary that you provided.
Thank you. I was listening. So here's what I'm going to have you do. I'm going to have you go to the private chat, and in there, get that text, and we're going to record that little promo that we were mentioning.
Excellent. Here we go. And we're still live, correct?
Correct. Yeah, when you're ready, go ahead and just record that.
All right. This is Jesper Maquindang. It was amazing to record with Roger an episode of Building the Premier Accounting Firm. We discuss different ways of building an effective leader, and that was through 4 power skills, which are active listening, which is public speaking, private or public. Let me start over. This is Jesper Maquindang. It was amazing to record with Roger an episode of Building the Premier Accounting Firm. We discussed different ways to build an effective leader, and that includes public speaking, public listening, private speaking, and private listening. And we talked about ways to build an effective culture, and that's through the mindset of the Core 4 Mentor, which develops the acronym LIFE, where listening, innovation, futuristic, and encouraging qualities really promote an effective culture, which means that you should breathe life into your organization to make it more worthwhile and effective. I invite you to listen and join us.